Aki listeners, let's learn sumo. I'm Clayton. Welcome to the podcast, live from outside the Kokugikan in the suburb of Ryogoku in Tokyo. Here we are on Tuesday after the Aki Basho, and what a tournament it was. Don't forget to join me on X or Twitter at Let's Learn Sumo to keep up to date with all the happenings. It all looked fairly sewn up by Onosato until day 12 when he lost to Wakatakakage after one of those matches of the tournament, if not match of the year. We'll get into that in a moment, but first let's talk about Ryogoku. If you walk around this suburb, you will find a plethora of sumo things, including just behind me this little seat has some imagery, some stories of sumo over the road. There's a number of them as well. A little bit quieter here after the tournament, not so many people floating around, but you'll hear the Sobu line, which is the one you get from Akihabara on the Yamanote line to get over to Ryogoku. A little bit of movement of traffic and what have you, so I hope that doesn't disturb us. So it all looked fairly sewn up by Onosato until day 12 when he lost to Wakatakakage after one of the matches of the tournament, if not a match of the year. That one will be on my list later on as we go through the year. But in the end, his chasers could not keep up the pace. Day 14, Onosato, he sealed his second Yusho and his promotion to Ozeki, which I think they announced yesterday afternoon or this morning, after winning 34 bouts in 3 tournaments as a Sanyaku wrestler, which means he's won those matches as a Komusubi or Sekiwake to get himself promoted. But if you also add the 11 wins as at Magashira 15, and then the next tournament, again, he won 11 matches at Magashira 5. He has piled on 56 matches, wins over 5 tournaments, which is an incredible record for someone who has come into the sport. Interestingly, I think they're already talking about him for Yokozuna. If he wants to make Yokozuna, they're saying he needs to do it as quickly as possible before inevitably injury hits. His dominance in this tournament, more so than previous, was clearly on display, winning 11 of his matches by some form of push, thrust out or force out, yorakiri, oshidashi or even tsukidashi. Only one win came from a hataki komi. His power is clearly on display each tournament, despite a blip in July, if you can call a 9 basho a blip. How does he do it? Well, he obviously has plenty of power to distribute and fast, and he can provide good drive from that tachi position. He's driving up with both of his hands at the tachi, trying hard to get up under the centre of gravity of his opponents. So you'll see both of his hands are pushing up in that motion. The double lift was clear in his fight with Oho. Massive double hit on the chest of Shodai. Hirodumi, even though he couldn't quite get under Hirodumi's arms, he's still got a decent armpit grip, and he used that power to drive hard. Mitakeumi, he blunted the attack a little bit due to his size. He got a bit of control of Onosato's arms off the tachi, forcing Onosato to try a little bit of a different tactic and try and change Mitakeumi's balance. A quick, half-hearted hataki komi attempt got Mitakeumi just slightly off balance. It was enough that once he happened, he got a quick refocus and drove again with the arms driving up at the chest from underneath. His fight against Wakamoto Haru was interesting in that he did this big double drive off the tachi, lifted Wakamoto Haru up, but then pushed him back to his defensive bail position. And we all know that Wakamoto Haru, he likes to fight back on the bails. He's very strong in that position. He struggled and got a belt grip, and after going around the Tawara bails, Wakamoto Haru, he just ran out of time. He did get a rear belt grip at the back, but it was all a bit too late for him. Now, while Kirishima, he copped a lot of criticism for trying to henker Onosato, that big henker attempt, it's clear he's seen those videos and he knew it was going to be difficult to defend against that big double push. Kirishima is more of a technique wrestler than a power wrestler, I would say. And look, a lot of people see the henker as unsportsmanlike behaviour. I still think it's a legitimate tactic, especially when faced with an opponent whose technique is so hard to defend against. To force your opponent to change their sumo is the name of the game, to change their tactics. And I see that henker as probably one of the smarter ones of this tournament, despite it not working for Kirishima. Clearly, Onosato, he recovered from the henker, he kept his balance, got straight back into a lifting chest drive and a Yorikiri belly pumping force out for Kirishima. I really don't think he deserved the criticism he got for that one. It was a good attempt, and against someone who drives so hard, probably a worthwhile tactic. Karashoho, he got the double up under lifting chest drive as he tried a defensive pull away and Hiki Itoshi pull down, which nearly worked for him as Onosato drove forward hard, but in the end, Onosato got that win. All this leads me to the Wakataka Kage fight, which I believe is one of the best fights of the, well, certainly of the tournament, and if not one of those of the year. His win over Onosato was a masterclass of belt fighting, and it saved him from going over multiple times from Onosato's power. So Wakataka Kage, he took the hit from the Tachiai, lifted him fast, he resisted, he got into that pocket really close and very quickly. That helped him to get that double rear inside belt grip on Onosato. Onosato knew he was in trouble with that double grip, and he pulled Wakataka Kage around fast. He tried a Zubineri head turn, but Wakataka Kage, he had that right belt grip, and without it, he would have gone sprawling. He recovered from a fairly awful position. He was very far forward as Onosato continued to try to lift Wakataka Kage back to the bales. He was under a huge pressure up on those bales, Waka. He had a vice-like grip on that right hand, and it saved him a second time. He got that, got to a left belt grip at the same time as they came back together, both inside, and he pulled Onosato around at the bales. I'm not sure how he achieved that. That sort of strength and presence of mind and sumo perfection is what we needed to beat Onosato. Kotazakura, he was nowhere near perfect this tournament, but he gave Onosato a good fight. He took a hit from Onosato on his left, but denied him the right, got into a grip battle. It was a pretty good performance, and look, while the Shimpans had a mono-e, gave it to Onosato, there was a suggestion that as Onosato went forward, he may have touched his hands on the dohyo on the way out. Look, perhaps that was a bit of karma for the win over Tobizaru on day 2. All it took with Hoshoryu, our other Ozeki, was 2 double Nodawas, perhaps higher, a little bit straighter than anyone else when Onosato gave him the hit. Look, and it certainly did the job there. Hoshoryu, he didn't have much in response to that. Look, the vulnerability of these big power thrusters comes to the fore in a fight like Kirishima, but also his last day fight with Arbi. Now, he lost that fight to Arbi, and that big momentum carries the risk of a hit and shift, or a henker for that matter. The hit and shift was very effective for Arbi, as Onosato's feet were spread wide, and one of his feet was just a little bit too far back, and it's an issue that Onosato will need to be aware of going forward. People will watch that tape, see where he's lost, and they'll take advantage of that. But with that win on day 14, he sealed his Yusho 13-2 and his Ozeki promotion, a deserved winner and a deserved new Ozeki after we lost Kirishima and Takakeisho, who I'll get to at the end. Our chasers this tournament include Kirishima, who spent much of March, May and July in the doldrums. He dropped to Sekiwake after he couldn't defend himself when he was Kataban as Ozeki, and he couldn't get his 10 wins to return to Ozeki in July. So a much improved Kirishima this time, chased Onosato throughout the tournament. He seemed more on point, more capable of power, as evidence of his bulldozing of Mitakoyumi, and he's back to his throwing techniques. He showed really good patience, I thought, with Ura in that fight. It was a bit of a funny bout. It's one to go back and watch. He even rested at one point with his hand on his knee. The loss to Hoshoryu, look, that was a bit of a blip, a very nasty Kirikaeshi backwards knee trip, which really looked more like a backwards body dump by Hoshoryu, a very classic Hoshoryu attempt at using the legs and more like a judo throw. Either way, a 12-win tournament restarts his Ozeki run. That's he needs a further 21 bouts over 2 tournaments to get in November and January to return to Ozeki. I know he's focused on that. He finished his tournament by using Onosato's trick of a double lifting chest drive against Daisho. Really neutered Daisho's thrusting, and a second hit to finish him off. So a good finish for Kirishima against a fairly active fighter in Daisho, our Komusubi. I would suggest Sekiwake at the next tournament. Our Junyusho runner-up Wakataka Kage, he kept up his chase, but he blotted his copybook with a couple of losses. Day 1 he lost to Tsurunumi, tried a Kotanage arm lock throw, didn't pay off for him. Then a loss to Kota Shoho on day 6 where he had a bit of a furious threshing battle, exchanged Sapari thrusting with them, got off balance and got Oshidashi'd out. And then again against fellow chaser Nishikigi, much improved Nishikigi, who let Nishikigi arm lock him for a Kotanage arm lock there. The bigger man won out that day. Look, he picked up Wakataka Kage, picked up a special prize, nice cash bonus for his troubles. Expect around Magashira 1 or 2 for Wakataka Kage. There's a couple of people in front of him. I can't see him going directly to Komusubi at that point. Our other Ozeki, Kotazakura, he finished with Kachikoshi, but only just on 8 and 7. Reports he was suffering from an ankle injury. The sun's just come out on this warm afternoon in Tokyo. Not as bad as day 1, week 1 of the tournament, where it was just blazing hot. I wouldn't even attempt to have sat here on that week 1. So back to Kotazakura, like we said, Kachikoshi, 8 and 7 only just. Report he had his ankle injury. 2 losses in week 1 to Oho and Wakamoto Haru. 5 losses in the second week. To suggest the injury happened somewhere early in the tournament, he really struggled in that second half. Certainly, I think he was missing some of the strength in a few of his fights. He was fairly lucky in that win against Tobizaru. He should have been more dominant there. A fight that, as I've said before, deserved a mono-e. That was disappointing. The good thing about Kotazakura's technique, as I've always said, is his mobile balance, his balance on the move. He is a little bit slow. He's certainly not as quick as Tobizaru, Ura or Midori Fuji, but his mobile balance, and of course he tries hard to get in on that belt. Now he's been Ozeki since March, and look, he simply hasn't delivered as everyone has expected. With a missing Yokozuna, injured fellow Ozekis, poorly performing Sekiwake, he's had multiple opportunities to win the Basho, and he just hasn't taken it. Let's see where he can go from here. Certainly the injury has not helped him. Classic Hoshoryu win with his win over Wakamoto Haru. An unusual Kimarite there, a twisting neck throw where he used his back leg and body grip. He did actually have the body grip when he started the throw, changed to a neck grip just halfway through it, and that completed the Kimarite there of the twisting neck throw. Hoshoryu's loss against Onosato for the Yusho. Look, that's probably the most disappointing for a strong Ozeki like Hoshoryu to be driven out so easily. That probably burns him a little bit. But he did save himself from Kataban. He came into last day 7 and 7, Nana showed Nana high, 7 and 7, looking for that last win so he could get up. He did get there on the last day, saved himself from Kataban so he can start afresh in November. The less said about Sekiwake, Abi's miserable tournament, probably the better. He got hankered on day 1 by Tobizaru. That probably set the scene for his Basho, pretty miserable from then on. Look, he did have his usual Nodowa thrusting wins. Nodowa thrusting wins against Mitakumi, forgive the trucks behind me, and Kota Shoho. The only real spots along the way, fairly simple Hikitoshi on Yusho winner Onosato, like I said, to pick up the bundle of envelopes on day 15. That was well sponsored, but a 5 and 10 will see him drop from Sekiwake probably to Magashira 1, maybe even Magashira 2. A 5 and 10 is a pretty poor tournament. He certainly won't drop to Komusubi. Our Komusubi Hirodumi, he suffered a Makikoshi as well, which he sewed up on day 14 against Shodai. Very poor second week for Hirodumi in the meat grinder, losing against Atami Fuji, Takayasu, Nishikigi and Shodai on the second week. He got a bit of a lesson from Onosato, but most everyone else did as well. His final bout against Mitakumi showed some pretty good stable Oshizumo to get to the front of the belt and drive and pump the bigger man back over the bales. A little bit of a bright spot for him there. A small drop from Sanyaku ranks will result for Hiradumi. I'd expect him probably at Magashira 1 coming the next tournament. Daiyosho, he's bound for Sekiwake again. He posted his 8-7 Kachikoshi. He beat Abe, Hiradumi, Kodazakura in the Sanyaku. That'll help. But a few losses against Hoshoryu Kirishima and both Waka brothers will give him pause to start again when he likely appears at Sekiwake in November. Look, I was encouraged a bit by his style. He went for some straight pushing, a little bit of a defensive tactic against Takanosho and Hiradumi, and a bit of an under-shoulder grab on Abe. It shows that he's developing as a wrestler, he's learning, he's not going to stick to just that threshing style. Takanosho, he had a tournament to forget at 4-11. The only bright spot for Takanosho was a win for Hoshoryu on day 1. Few moves where he just wrong-footed. He was a little bit wrong-footed, like against Wakamoto Haru. Wakamoto Haru ended up in a sideways rugby position and pretty much drove him across the ring to get him out. It was pretty emblematic of his tournament. Really poor time of it. In that meat grinder position at Magashira 1, maybe a touch too high for him. Tobizaru, he also had a tournament to forget. His loss to Kodazakura was probably the worst of it, through no fault of his own, I suppose, but otherwise pretty miserable. His Chaos Agent style, look, it sometimes leaves him fairly unbalanced and a little bit wrong-footed. It might be time to take a leaf out of Ura's book. Speaking of which, a return to form for Ura, a little bit more luck there. He seemed to make a few minor changes to his sumo, some good driving wins this time, some good thrusting and driving, particularly his win over Kodazakura, which was just a really good pushing drive out, Oshizumo style, very basic sumo, and it worked for him. Wakamoto Haru, he just had a welcome return to form, pushing out an excellent 11-4 record. Probably won't get him back to Komusubi, but I'd expect at least Magashira 1, possibly sharing with his brother Waka Takakage, or maybe just below at Magashira 2. His belt work, it seemed to find him again. His defensive positions on the bales, really good. Nishikigi, he was in a battle for most of the tournament, and some welcome return to form. He has been in the absolute lost in the forest for a number of months now. A good solid pushing seems to have found him. He finished with an excellent 11-4. Same with Hokuto Fuji, who returned after a short Kyujo mid-tournament. Luckily enough, he came back for a couple of wins, finished on 8 wins, 5 losses, 2 absences. Although he was in the running about halfway through that tournament before he went Kyujo. Sorry team, had a little technical issue there with the wind blowing over my tripod. Let's start again. Like I said, Nishikigi, he was in the battle for most of the tournament, moved on to Hokuto Fuji 8-5-2. Takayasu the Bear, perennial runner-up. I think he's been Jun Yusho something like 7 or 8 times. Didn't make it this time, got his 10 wins, but it was a pretty good tournament for Takayasu. Some good power there. Same as Takara Fuji. Had a couple of miserable tournaments, but has come back strongly on 10 wins. Nishiki Fuji, Magashira 17, who was spared by the committee last time from the Juryo barge and stayed at Magashira 17 despite a Makekoshi. He got himself a Kachikoshi to legitimately stay in Makuuchi for November. So, Kachikoshi to those who we haven't mentioned. Oho, really good strength, 9-6. Shodai, 10-5, an excellent tournament. Churanumi, again, much improving, 10-5, as well as Oshoma. Going back to that form he showed on his debut, he seems to have settled into Makuuchi now. Those guys will jump up the list. Endo, Kachikoshi with 8-7, Roga and Ryuden both with 8-7. Pretty good form there. Demotions in play, as I said, for our Sekiwake Abe, he'll be back to Magashira. Hiradumi, our Komusubi, he'll be back to Magashira 7-8. Takanosho, 4-11, Magashira 1, he will drop down reasonably seriously. Tobizaru 5 and 10 just couldn't pick up those wins. Tried very hard. Kodoshoho 7 and 8 for him. A big demotion for our big man Shononumi, who could only manage 3 wins. Look, his form this time, he just didn't seem to have the power and the thrust. I'd suggest he's got, I think we'll find out later, he's probably got some sort of back injury, because there was not a lot of power in Shononumi's sumo this time. Our brawler, Meisei, he only got 5 wins. Gonayama 6 and 9. Midori Fuji, a perennial trier, got a 7 and 8, got 3 Katasakashis into his stable, despite Endo resisting it really well. He did try to Katasakashi Endo a number of times early in the tournament, and Endo just had the power to resist it. Look, his fight against Wakataka Kage was impressive. He wrestled hard to prevent a belt grip there, but in the end, Wakataka Kage got him. Ichi Yamamoto just missed out 7 and 8. Tamawashi also missed out on 7 and 8, but did pick up his over 1,300 consecutive fights this tournament, over 20 years of sumo without missing. Sadanumi 7 and 8, Onokatsu 7 and 8. Those who will be nervous and looking to see if a ticket to the Juryo barge turns up on their doorstep will be Kageyaki at Magashira 11. He got a 3 and 12. He might be safe. Bushozan 4 and 11 at Magashira 12, as well as Kinbozan 4 and 11 at Magashira 12. Those guys want to keep an eye on their letterbox. Gone on the Juryo barge will be the white bear Shiro Kuma. 4 wins, 9 losses and 2 absences. Kitanowaka, he's down around the lower Magashira. He'll be 6 and 9. Juryo promotions will obviously be Chio Shoma, who did quite well, punched out double figures. He was fighting for the Basho in Juryo. Toki Hayate, 9 and 6, and probably Shishi, our Ukrainian man, had a fairly good rise so far, 9 and 6. It'll be interesting to watch if Takeda Fuji, who won the Juryo Yusho with 13-11, whether they put him up. He is sitting at Juryo 11. It's a long way to jump. Never know, stranger things have happened. So, to finish off our tournament, we can't finish off without mentioning Ozeki, former Ozeki, Takakeisho, who has now retired. So we can't finish the tournament, but let me just pause there for a moment. I don't want to intrude on the man's privacy, but I've got to point out when a sumo goes past you as you're filming, it just adds to the effect. Back at it. So we can't let the tournament go past without mentioning our former Ozeki Takakeisho. He retires. He'll now take the Oyakata name of Minatogawa. Look, I'm really happy I got to see him fight twice live in both this tournament over 2 days and the tournament back in January 2023. As I said, I actually rewatched his match against Midori Fuji from January 2023. I think it was on about day 8. That one I gave my fight of the year last year. It is still a fantastic match to watch. A lot of passion there. So you've got to have huge respect for a career which has included 4 Yushos, 8 Jun Yushos, 4 lower division Yushos, 3 Kinboshi stars against Yokozuna, 7 special prizes and 30 Bashos as an Ozeki. That is an enviable record for anybody. Our battle hamster got all of that up in his record books. A fantastic career, probably pulled a little bit too early. Unfortunately, his neck injury was causing him dramas for at least a year, and it was not likely that he was ever going to come back from that. It appears that it's going to be one of those lifelong injuries that athletes pick up. Anyway, that is it from the Aki Basho in Tokyo. I hope you've enjoyed what I could put together for this tournament. It's been a little bit of a challenge travelling around Japan, but obviously enjoy the scenery here at Ryogoku. The flags are still up, the tower's still up, The stadium looks great. Still plenty of people around. There's lots to see in this area. If you go over the other side of the train station, if you're lucky enough to visit here, there are all sorts of shops and things. Inside the stadium, there are many souvenir shops, lots of different options in there, great food. It's an excellent day at the Sumo. I hope you get a chance to do it, and we'll talk about sumo again in future. That's it from me from Tokyo. Let's learn sumo.